You're listening to episode 145 of the Christian Travelers Network. Today's topic is How God Has Wired Us to Be Explorers with Samuel Chestnutt. Hi, my name is Sarah, and I have a background in theology and a love for travel. Having visited 9 different countries and served in 5 congregations, I wanted to create an environment that discusses and encourages the overlap of my 2 favorite things, the Lord and travel. And if you have a passion for these things, or wanting to learn how God is such an integral part of our daily adventures, then you've come to the right place. Today's topic is How God Has Wired Us to Be Explorers with Samuel Chestnutt. Hey, Christian travelers, I'm so glad that you tuned in today. We have an awesome guest from Ireland who's going to be talking about the fact that the Lord has wired us to be explorers and adventurers. And he is a person who has a very similar passion to me, believing that the Lord has told us through scripture that travel is incredibly important. And I'm excited to get to have him share some of those thoughts and ideas with us today. But before we dive in, I want to once again point you to our website, christiantravelers.net. In the coming weeks, we're going to be releasing a platform that will allow you as Christian travelers to get to network, connect with one another around the world, plan trips together, and just build a safe community focused on that Christian travel community. So go ahead, head there, join our email list to get updates about that, and get updates about our most recent podcast as well. But without further ado, Samuel Chestnutt is a husband and best friend to his wife, Sarah. Together, they have 4 beautiful children, ages 10 to 4. Samuel is a lover of all things travel, good food, of laughter, and of Turkish delights. Hey, Samuel, how are you doing?
Hello, Sarah. I'm well. We finally did it. We got to this podcast. How long have we been waiting for this?
I don't know, maybe a year or so, but I'm
Yeah.
so excited that you're here.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here. And before we go any further, I want to say thank you to you for your efforts in trying to build this Christian travel network. I do think it's a really good thing that you're doing, and I'm delighted to be able to help and be part of that. And I commend it to all our listeners. Hop on that christiantravelers.net and you'll be encouraged.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Well, Samuel, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and just your love for Christian travel, how that came into being?
Okay, let's just start with a heavy question. Well, yes, I formerly was a teacher for about 16 years, and as part of that job, one of the things that I enjoyed best about teaching was the field trips, was the getting out of the classroom, and in my context, going to explore the story of Patrick, his origins, the Christian history of Ireland. But as with my older students, I took them on the study trips to Rome. Later, I volunteered with the company and took them to Israel. So just sort of taking that aspect of the teaching profession, I just loved outdoor teaching in the classroom and doing it as we traveled. And then an opportunity arose after I met my beautiful American wife to actually start a travel company. And I thought, could we really make a go of this? Like, could I make a career out of offering initially study tours, but then I grew much broader than that. For my friends in America, Bethlehem Baptist in Minneapolis, they said, "Yeah, give it a go." So we did one trial trip, and out of that trial trip, it just blossomed into what we now know as Edengate Travel. So that's how the story came about. But I'll pause there and let you ask any further questions of clarification if you want.
Well, that's really awesome. Actually, I kind of had that same
Hmm.
situation. I was in ministry, but I found that I had such deeper conversations and relationship building when we were out on retreats and on trips.
Hmm.
And that was kind of a big pull for me as to why Christian travel mattered. It was a big piece of the relational building.
Yeah, there's something about when you're on tour that Um, you let your hair down. Well, not in my case. You let your hair down. For those who can't see this, I'm completely bald, so I can't let my hair down. But metaphorically speaking, you let your hair down and you become more relaxed in a traveling context, and conversations open up, they blossom. And if you're clued into what God has wired us to do and relationally love other people, travel is a great opportunity to go there. to go to people's hearts to find out what's going on in their lives as you together stand observing and exploring a particular destination. So yeah, I totally identify with that, Sarah. That's really um, a great thing.
Yes. And speaking of wired, one of your beliefs is that we are, or that God has designed us to be explorers, that we're wired in that
Hmm.
way. Can you explain that a little bit?
I would love to, yes. And I'm going to explain that using our motto as to help do that. So, what I believe has basically fashioned and formed how we have built our company. So, our motto is explore, marvel, share. And I believe that God has wired every human being to be explorers. Now, where do I get that from? I get that from Genesis chapter 1 and verse 28. You find one of the first commands that God gave human beings was to be fruitful, was to multiply. He calls us to fill the earth and subdue it. Some translations render that as go forth and
Mm,
multiply, or go forth and fill the earth, go forth and subdue it. But in that sort of filling the earth and moving out, there is movement, there is a going. And so I believe we've been wired by God to go. And built into the DNA of every human being is that exploration, that going. So to be human is to explore. To be human is to go, and whether that's to some far flung place in the planet, or in your own backyard, or the field next door, that's within us. We love exploring, and we're wired by God to do that. And as we go out and explore, something brilliant happens. We find stuff. We find the Grand Canyon. We find a flower at the bottom of our garden. We find a beautiful vista at the top of a mountain. We find a gorgeous tree, or we see it in four different seasons. When we find those things, we marvel. You can't not stand on the precipice of the Grand Canyon. You can't not stand at the top of a beautiful mountain in any location looking down and not marvel. We actually, it just something within us is created by God just to go, whoa, that is amazing. So we marvel. So I believe we're designed by God to go and explore. We're designed, when we find those things, to actually to marvel and to just shout about it. But thirdly, you can't not find those things and not talk about it. you
mm,
know we want to share, we want to gossip the things that we find about in our holidays, and we travel, and the things we discover. So we're wired to share it. So I think that natural progress of exploring and marveling and sharing, it can be applied not just to creation, but here's my point, that we actually can apply it to the character and the goodness of God.
mm,
And what we do on this side of the resurrection, I think, is a rehearsal of what we'll do on the other side of the resurrection when Christ returns. So there will never be a place where we will have reached the full depths of the exploration of God's character.
mm,
He's infinite. We will spend our forever discovering little extra nuances about his grace and his goodness. And as we find those things, we will marvel at them, and then we will turn to those who are with us in eternity, and we will share and talk about it with them. So the way we've tried to build our company is almost, when you come on one of our tours or come on one of our travel experiences, it's almost like a rehearsal for what you will do in the new heavens and the new earth forever. We will spend our forever exploring, marveling, and sharing not just Christ and his and the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, but his creation, and with the people we love. So I believe that we're wired by God for that. We're wired by God for the big, the great, the wonderful. We're wired by God for himself. And one of the means by which he helps us discover him is his creation. He uses the beautiful things in this planet to help us better see him. John Piper describes it as and he's quoting C.S. Lewis when he says this, when he's talking about, man's problem is not that we cannot find pleasure or cannot find joy. Our problem is that we're far too easily satisfied with lesser things. And he talks about, we're far too satisfied playing with mud pies in a drain system, rather than actually being satisfied with a sandcastle on a beautiful beach. And so when we fall in love with the things of creation, whether it be travel, whether it be family relationship, whether it be food or culture, when we fall in love with those things without referencing the source of those good things, we're actually missing the point. And so
mm,
travel is a really good way at helping us look beyond the joy of what we're traveling to the source of the one who makes that good culture, good food, good creation, good all that stuff. So that's just a foundational introduction to it, Sarah.
Yes, yes. And as we're exploring, marveling, and sharing, you were touching on how it's so important to acknowledge the creator,
Mm,
but at the same time, because it's something that's wired in all of us, whether we're believers or not, we're all
yeah,
um, doing this naturally. We're all marveling. There's just some people who don't know that the creator is what they're truly marveling after. And as
absolutely.
Christians, we're just blessed to have that perspective.
Yeah, and that perspective can really be a real good evangelistic tool. And it's a winsome way to get to the source of creation, Christ. When you're out traveling the planet with people, or your friends in your own location, there's a joint joy in
Mm,
exploring together, and that is very disarming. And so, as you enjoy together, certainly in my case, as I have enjoyed the traveling experience I've had with particularly with atheists and
mm,
agnostics, there's a real desire to engage on the bigger issues. Like we don't hide the fact we are a Christian travel company that offers Christian tours for churches, for couples, for anybody. But I have been really shocked by the request of agnostics and atheists to come on these tours because they say, we want to engage at that level, and we want to go with somebody who believes for themselves what they're talking about. So I find that aspect really interesting and a bit bewildering at times, but I relish and enjoy the opportunity to talk about those things as you say.
yeah. Absolutely. And that's really interesting that they choose to engage with you, and how you get to use that as an opportunity not only to witness, but also to just marvel over his creation.
You know,
Um, Do you believe that people embrace this desire for exploration, or do they kind of shy away from it? I know during COVID there's been a lot more people just kind of stuck inside, and have they just developed a habit of kind of shying away from exploration, you think, or is it still there?
oh, well, as I said at the start, to explore is to be human. It will always be there. So
Mhm.
to be human is to explore and want to get out. We're drawn to windows. We're drawn to light. We're drawn to fresh air. We're drawn to experiences, and COVID certainly has, I think, heightened that desire. Um,
Mhm.
so just clarify your question for me again. Was it the question? Do we are human beings?
Do people shy away from exploration, and if so, why?
Do people shy away from inspiration? I don't know if they shy away from it because they're wired for it.
Mhm.
Um, it's just about finding opportunity to encourage them to go that direction.
Mhm.
Um, because I think like when I reflect on like Psalm 19 verse 1, the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim His handiwork. Or Isaiah 55 verse 12, the trees in the fields clap their hands. There is a melody, there is a song being sung by creation, and it is gravitating towards praise for God. And
Mhm.
we are part of that creation. So whether people are aware of it or not, um, I believe humanity is drawn to that praise of something bigger than themselves. Augustine talks about every human being have a God-shaped hole in their heart, and until Christ is in that heart, that space, they will never be truly or fully human. And so there is a desire to pull, yeah, creation and the way we're wired as humans by God. Creation is singing that song, and we join in with that song. And travel is one of the ways that we do that. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think,
Yeah. No, I think I agree for the most part that we all are definitely seeking it. I
mm,
think that there's maybe more of a hesitant attitude towards it, or anxiety sometimes. There's this desire also, I think, that we wrestle with to stay in our comfort zone sometimes. And I think that is kind of that sinful nature trying to hold us back from seeing those amazing wonders of the Lord at the same time.
hmm.
Yeah.
And you mean for like the likes of COVID having an impact on that and causing us not being able to engage?
Yeah. Yeah. In to some regard, and I know every circumstance is different,
It's
but
different, yeah.
I think I think we see this transformation for many people as we move from our youth to our adulthood,
Mm.
and just kind of losing a sense of wonder sometimes, or stifling our wonder and creativity. That it's still there, but we don't nurture it as well as maybe we should.
Yeah, I do agree with that because I think Shakespeare says familiarity breeds contempt.
Mm,
You can become so familiar with something it loses its wonder. And one of the challenges of living in a fallen, cursed world is that we become bored very quickly, and we
mm,
become bored with creation. Ah, sure, I've seen it before. You know, the truth of the gospel, no big deal. That's where we've an inclination towards that, and we have to we need the Holy Spirit to regenerate us and to move us in the direction of fresh discovery that we find in the Word. And again, travel and time and His creation helps that because Psalm 19 or Psalm 119 communicates that there's two things that communicate truth about God, and it is His Word, but creation. So those two things together. So ideally, when you're going traveling, Bible in one hand, travel guide in the other is a sweet spot.
yes, yes. And talking about Bible in one hand and travel guide in the other, you have kind of, I guess you've explored a theology of travel, and I don't think that's a term we hear very often.
Hmm.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. Yes, we have. Our company sort of grew out of a desire to invite people to explore their own Christ centered theology of travel. Um, I think one of the struggles I had with Christian travel in the past was it was it settled for less.
Mhm,
Having a good time, enjoying God and creation is good, but there's so much more in that. And knowing that we're wired by God for Him, really sort of encouraged me to start thinking about, well, what is a Christ centered theology of travel? Because Colossians talks about um, in everything He is preeminent, or in everything He has the supremacy. So if Christ is Lord of all, well, surely that means He's Lord of our leisure, or we say leisure, your leisure time as well. So what does that look like? And I started to think, well, if Christ was Lord of my leisure time, what would that look like? So does a right understanding of God infiltrate every single area of my life, my marriage, my business, and in this case, leisure? And so I was trying to give thought to what that looks like, and so we developed what we. It's nothing spectacular in one sense. It's just Bible verses that call us to reflect on who Christ is, His lordship of all areas, and how we can practically give over our leisure and travel time to Him, so that when we and what's that look like in practice? Well, when we go to a destination, um, it's seeking out the ministry opportunities in that location. In fact, one of the maybe we can expand on this in a moment, but one of the ways we actually built Edengate was to, instead of starting with the travel, Sarah, we started with the efforts of mission work across a given country. So, for example, in Ireland, rather than start with beautiful locations, and there are loads of them in Ireland, we said, where are the church planting efforts across the country? Where are the missionaries and the pastors and their families that are trying really hard to share the good news of who Jesus Christ is in a given location? And you can be guaranteed that no matter where they're doing it, they're in a beautiful location in Ireland. So rather than build the itinerary around the lovely locations, we pinpointed the church planting efforts and said, right, we will build our itineraries around those planting efforts or those mission agencies. And
mm,
that's how we practically try to develop a Christ centered theology of travel. And we basically invite our guests into that. So they get, from an American perspective, they're getting what Americans are looking for when they come to Ireland, which is leprechauns, which is little stories and fairies and Guinness stew, all these things that Americans are looking for. But on top of that, they're being introduced to the Christian story of Ireland, not just in Patrick's time, but right up to date. So
mhm,
sadly in our history, we have killed each other. for the sake of the gospel, which is awful in our Northern Irish context. And yet, God has not given up on our wee particular corner of the globe. And there is beautiful things that are happening. There's peace, there's reconciliation, there's healing happening. So our tours try to plug our guests into that. So they have a really deep, rich relational experience alongside beautiful scenery, great culture, and wonderful food. So that has been an attempt to develop a Christ-centered theology of travel, and one offshoot. And I'm off on a run here. Please tell me to stop talking or interject, please, at any point. One of the things that has grown out of that is, as I met with these pastors across Ireland over a 3-year period, I discovered that so many of them they were struggling with the same issues. They were felt alone. The Republic of Ireland is actually the least reached English-speaking country in the world, and I never would have discovered that had I not have got out to travel. Had I not have got out to explore my island, I never would have discovered that fact. And many of these planters, these church planters, never knew the other one existed. Or they were aware of them, but not quite sure where they were at. So, using travel and the travel industry, I invited those denominational network leaders together and said, let's meet each other. Let's talk about how we can do a joint up effort to reach our island for Christ. And I'm delighted to say that after 3-4 years, that body has actually birthed something called the Irish Gospel Partnership, which we chair as a travel company. As
Mhm.
I'm a business person who chairs that body of leaders, and those leaders collectively strategically work out how can we reach the nation of Ireland together, because we can do more together than we can apart. And that is what grew out of our travel company. And we're now actually replicating that in Israel, Italy, and we'd started in Ukraine, Norway, and a number of other destinations across Europe. So that model of sort of redeeming travel for the Great Commission is very much a driving force behind what we do. And depending on the church group that comes in, will determine how heavily involved we get in that. Because not all groups want a deep church planting mission experience, and we would love that if it's the case. But many just want, you know what? We just want to explore the country, and we want a flavor of mission in our trip, introduced to these people, and we're delighted to do any level of those things. But I've said an awful lot there. I'm going to stop, take a breath, and let you ask a question.
Well, really, my question is, when you initially started researching church planting around Ireland, was the thought that um, was the intent initially to support them by coming alongside them as a travel group? I know oftentimes missionaries do feel very alone. Was
Hmm.
the intent then for your group to come support that church itself, or did you have a different idea for that?
Well, I would love to stand here and tell you I had it all worked out from the beginning, Sarah, and I knew exactly where we were going. That is not the case. No, I just had a deep burden for the Christian effort in my own country. Like, I'm from Northern Ireland, which is actually, in comparison, one of the most reached English speaking countries in the world. And yet, over the border, my closest neighbor was or is the least reached. So I felt a burden to do something about that. And well, if you're burdened for the loss in your nation, the most obvious thing to do is to start a travel company, isn't it? No, it's not. But that's what the Lord put in my heart and used my circumstances to move it in that direction. So it's basically started with one. My wife Sarah used to work for one of the pastors for John Piper's church in Bethlehem Baptist, Minneapolis, and that church family said, "Hey Samuel, throw together a tour for us and see what comes of it." So it was one trial tour where I said, "Okay, I think I can do that." Pulled the trip together, invited a few pastors, and at that point, that's when I realized, whoa, hold on a second. There's something in this. There's an opportunity to encourage, to use travel and the travel industry to encourage missionaries across our country. It
Mm,
basically blossomed and grew out of that, to
mhm,
the point now where we try and host events, conferences, and when a church approaches us, we use our travel agency net rates to
mm,
pass that on to the church groups to help them in their mission work. So it grew, it took on a life of its own. And looking back, like, the Lord has really, like, I wasn't thinking logos, names, tags, website. That wasn't where I was, but the Lord has brought that to our plate, and I'm delighted and humbled by it.
Yes, absolutely. That's really cool. And how one little thought or thing that the Lord was burdening you with led to the exploration
Mm.
of travel altogether. So, yeah.
Yes, it's amazing to think. And also out of that, sorry, here I go again.
Nope.
Another thing that happened was that these American churches started saying, "Well, can we actually support these churches?" Sure, of course you can. So all of a sudden, we are now offering logistics for church planning efforts from America coming across churches in Ireland, encouraging the Irish church to step up and be the indigenous leader,
Mm,
backed by a like-minded American church partner. So what has formed is a transatlantic missional church planting effort that a travel company facilitates.
mm,
And as that grew, these American churches that we want to send finance to support, one of the things we want to do is send finance to these churches. Can we do that through you? Well, then, okay, next problem. How do I funnel charitable funds through it? I'm very happy to receive any money that you want to give me, but to be above reproach, I couldn't do that. So we had to sit down and work out, right, we have to start a charity. So we started a charity
mm,
which Edengate, my company, financed and set up, and it's called Patrons International, and that is the 501c3 in the US and in the UK and in Europe, basically, which helps funnel financial support from very generous donors in the US who want to back church planting efforts in Ireland and in Europe and beyond. So this little travel company, which started with a little idea of one trip, started a national gospel partnership in Ireland. Charity to fund that effort, and that is now being replicated across a number of nations in Europe. And I still shake my head and go, how on earth did that happen? What happened there?
yes. Well, Samuel, we've really enjoyed having you on the podcast. Do you have any other things that you want to share or encourage with Christian travelers in general?
Whoa, have we come to the end of our time already? What? Where'd
I know.
that time go?
Time flies.
I would encourage you who are listening. This is not me giving a plug. Come and book an Edengate travel holiday. No, by all means do if you want, but open your back door, get out there, and start exploring as you will do in the new heavens and the new earth. Because I really do believe that you do not need to come on an Edengate holiday to do what God has wired you to do. Stop, smell the roses, take a look at that sunrise. Look at the grass, play with your puppy, engage with your children, love your wife. Do all these things, uh, knowing that they are only tasters of what is yet to come. Like any good thing we have on this earth, which travel can offer us, is only a very, very dim taster of the joy of what will is ahead of us. So I would just encourage you to involve Christ in your walking, in your exercising, in your loving, in your eating, in your cultural exploration, in your travel. Involve Christ in all of that, because all I keep telling my children, where do all good things come from? God's hand. That's true. So he loves you, and God's default is to just shower you with good things. And one of the ways he does that is travel and exploration. But I am conscious, I am talking, and I need to draw. Are we having a part two to this conversation?
Yes, we should totally have you on again to talk about some more things. But we didn't get to it earlier, and I do want to now. You talked about uh, this exploration that continues in the new earth and the new
Mm.
heaven. Um, I think we had talked about this previously, but I wanted you to mention, do you believe that exploration and travel will be something that we get to experience um, after Judgment Day?
Oh my goodness. An absolute resounding yes, Sarah. And look, listen, I can't point to the Bible and say, and it says in this verse in the Bible, we will get up and we will climb a mountain and we will explore good. There's no, God has given us biblical imagination. For example, Psalm 16:11 says, in your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. Now, can you imagine sitting in God's presence in a fully resurrected brand new earth with fully resurrected bodies that will never ache,
Yeah.
age, wither away, in a context that you can never grow tired of. I cannot imagine we will sit on our backsides and do nothing. Do you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
could you imagine what we can do with a resurrected mind that has no limits,
Yeah.
with resources that have no limits? You know, when I think about it, I get goose pimples or goosebumps down my back. Do you know? Yes, I believe we will spend forever exploring God, His character, and His planet with others. And maybe we should pause that and have a whole podcast with verses to unpack that at a later stage, because I think that would be something really worthwhile doing. And it would enthuse us to get excited, because unfortunately, I think what happens in the church is we sort of reduce our walk with the Lord to just what we do on a Sunday. No, God
Mhm.
is just as interested in what we do on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, during the week, every day of the week. And travel is one way of helping us get excited about what we will do in the new earth. But listen, I'm sorry, I will stop talking.
Oh, Samuel, I appreciate your enthusiasm and I agree. Travel is just one piece of the bigger picture, but sometimes when we stop to reflect on how God is a role in all parts of our life, including our leisure, it helps us to put him this back into the center of so many other things.
Hmm.
We've been really enjoyed hearing from you. Samuel, one of the questions that I always ask our guests is what has been the biggest God moment in all of your travels?
Oh, nice light one for the end there, Sarah. And you want me to be succinct?
We got a little bit of time left.
What is the best? Oh goodness, what is the best God moment? I should have given more thought. What is the best God moment that I have experienced in my travels? Oh, Sarah. There was a moment when I was hosting a tour in Israel, and we can edit this if you need to. I was hosting a tour in Israel, and there was a bit of trouble in the the old city, which often is the case. I'm from Northern Ireland. I'm used to bombs and bullets. This happens. I grew up with it. Um, there was a moment where there's a crowd rush, and everything had gone wrong. And there was one particular girl in my group who was always late. And I said to the group, "Now, if you're going to come with me, please be on time." And as an adult, you can't tell other adults to be on time. You invite them to be there at the right time. But she was late again. But for about 2 minutes, we were moving into the old city. And as we walked in, had we have been on time, we would have been right in the middle of the firecrackers and the whatever explosions that would have happened.
Mm,
Um, and God taught me a sort of just a tiny little lesson there. Trust me, even in the opportunities where you get frustrated and annoyed, He is overseeing even in those. Because had we have been on time, we would have been right smack bang in the middle of that crowd that turned and surged.
mm.
Um, that would have been trouble for my group. That's not a good advertisement for going to Israel, But that was a one-off occasion. But the Lord taught me that. Um, I thought that wasn't a very good answer, Sarah.
No, that's really good. And that is a good reminder because I think often we're just go, go, go,
Mm,
especially the American culture. And oftentimes we forget that the Lord is teaching us patience, or we oftentimes disqualify joy. Sermon that
mm,
we just heard at my congregation a couple weeks ago. We disqualify joy by being impatient and rushing through the present, and sometimes the Lord can teach us and keep us safe by delaying us.
yeah.
And that's amazing.
Because the good news is He knows what He's doing, Sarah. He
Yes.
He has oversight of the entire situation that we find ourselves in, globally and locally as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Samuel, we've really enjoyed having you on the podcast. How can our listeners connect with you outside of today's episode?
Um, www.edengatetravel.com if you're interested in connecting with me there, or finding out what we do. That website is about to be relaunched because our focus has been on Ireland initially, but we're now branching out into other European and Bible land destinations like Israel, Jordan, Egypt, and Turkey and Greece and all that. So by all means, you can find us there. We have a Facebook page, and we have another network which is called, it used to be called the US Christian Travel and Tourism Network, which I've become the president of that, but that is now called Wayfaith, the Christian travel and tourism thing. So I'm very keen to sort of even to continue our conversations there about how we could have a joined up effort, because I really think we could build a good global Christian travel network, and I'd be delighted to do that with you. So find me there in Edengate Travel. If you ring that number or you send an email, it's me at the other end of the line. I'd be delighted to chat to any of you about not just a tour to Ireland or Europe, but a Christ-centered theology of travel.
Well, thank you, Samuel. We've really appreciated hearing from you.
You too, Sarah.
Thanks. Well, Christian travelers, I hope that you have been encouraged and that you have a desire to do some exploration and to embrace that call that the Lord has given us to explore, to marvel, and to share. And I encourage you to check out Edengate and connect with Samuel as well. If you're looking for other ways to connect with the Christian travel community, you are always welcome to join us at christiantravelers.net, follow us on social media, and of course, again, our platform will be launching soon, so stay tuned for more details about that. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and if you're looking for a similar episode, I encourage you to head to episode 97, where Dan Zahner shares what embracing adventure and exploration can look like, also from a different Christian perspective, or from a more outdoorsy one, I should say. Well, thanks so much for tuning in today, and until next time, safe travels and God bless.